The Kennedy White House was nothing short of a menagerie, but JFK's favorite was his dog Charlie, the only pet to move into the White House with them. Others came later, and there were a lot. Not all of the Kennedy pets were kept on the grounds of the White House, and according to Vanity Fair, stabling a few of Jackie Kennedy's horses in a manner she felt befitting to them caused some problems. When JFK was elected, Jackie had 2 horses, Rufus and a bit of Irish. They were kept at a nearby estate in Glen Ora, and yes, it was the sort of place that had a private heliport. There's not much available information about either horse, likely because they were kept out of the public eye. In fact, there's so little known about them today that the information listed by the JFK Presidential Library and Museum is wrong. Rufus is described as a Palomino, but he was a brown and white piebald, while Bit of Irish was a bay gelding. Rufus gets a small mention in Vicki Moon's The Private Passion of Jackie Kennedy Onassis, Portrait of a Rider. He was the result of accidental breeding and was named after the local vet. Still, he ended up being such a solid riding horse that he was credited with giving the First Lady confidence as a rider, including the confidence to ride with John Jr. on the horse in front of her. Bit of Irish gets less of a mention. He was named in honor of JFK's Irish heritage and was the horse she was riding when she took a high-profile fall during a fox hunt. Jackie Kennedy's acquisition of the bay gelding Sardar ended up being problematic for the White House. He was an expensive personal gift from Pakistan's President Ayub Khan. Jackie was on a state visit when she struck up a friendship with the horse-loving president, but when he gifted her the horse she rode while there, it created big issues. According to Vicki Moon, she accepted the gift, got Sardar on a transport to the States, then wrote her husband and asked him to pull some strings, saying, "He is so beautiful and high-strung, it would be cruel to quarantine him in New York for 30 days. Cannot bear to be parted from him that long. Could you not have a veterinarian examine him in New York and say he was free from all disease and have him go straight to Glen Ora?" She went on to say it was such a big deal that observing the mandatory quarantine period was likely to lose him the support of the ASPCA, to which the president responded, "I'm doing nothing but taking care of Sardar." Sardar was reportedly subjected to a fire hose spray with a fungicide, then sent to his home. He became a staple at horse shows, including the Washington International Horse Show. It can be argued that the Kennedy family is America's version of the royals, and their herd of horses didn't help matters. According to Vicki Moon, longtime Kennedy advisor Fred Dutton said that they were well aware of how it looked to have the First Lady keeping a stable full of very expensive horses, saying, "From the view inside, we thought Mrs. Kennedy's horses were pretty aristocratic and didn't play well with Joe's six-pack." This led to an official recommendation that they not accept any more horses gifted from overseas, but that didn't keep the herd from growing. A wild buckskin yearling was given to the family by Lyndon B. Johnson after being bred on the ranch belonging to John B. Connolly, who in 1963 would be wounded during JFK's assassination. Originally named Little John, the horse was renamed Tex and came with a massive warning: do not let the children ride him until he's been through extensive professional training. When Tex was handed over to a trainer, he was described as impossible to handle. But it wasn't long until, under the guidance of professional trainers, Tex became a children's pony and was often seen trotting around the White House lawn with a young rider on board. In his memoir, Dog Days at the White House, The Outrageous Memoirs of the Presidential Kennel Keeper, Kennel Master Traphus Bryant shared the Kennedy family's rule: a dog could do no wrong. Bryant went on to recall, "A White House policeman asked me if my foot was wet. I said, 'No, it's not raining.' He grinned and I looked down and Charlie was just putting his hind leg down. Then Charlie did the same thing on Mrs. Kennedy." Charlie, a Welsh Terrier, was JFK's favorite, despite his iffy behavior at times. But troublesome as he was, Charlie was also a trusted confidant. Bryant recalled that during the chaos of the Cuban Missile Crisis, with the country on the brink of war, JFK needed a moment to compose himself and asked for Charlie.
They didn't tell his secrets, and he was able to confide in them without any worries that anybody was listening.
As Bryant recalled, he petted the dog and it seemed to relieve his tension. Charlie would often join the president for a swim in the White House pool, and if there are any doubts that a Kennedy dog could do no wrong, Bryant's anecdotes about Charlie's tendencies to bite White House staff confirm it. Bryant writes, "He would slip up behind a worker and bite him in the seat of his pants or grab his leg. Then he would run like hell, but nobody wanted to take it to the president. I guess they figured if they couldn't get along with Charlie and it was a choice of who would go, Charlie would stay." It was Caroline Kennedy who later explained how, at the height of the Cold War, her family ended up with a Russian dog in the White House. She told the BBC that her mother was at a state dinner in Vienna when she found herself seated next to Nikita Khrushchev. Caroline explained, "She ran out of things to talk about, so she asked about the dog Strelka that the Russians had shot into space. During the conversation, my mother asked about Strelka's puppies. A few months later, a puppy arrived and my father had no idea where the dog came from and couldn't believe my mother had done that. If it seems like a gift from Russia would raise eyebrows, it certainly did. Bryant shared that before Pushinka was allowed to join her new family, she underwent a thorough inspection that included scanning for listening devices. While Pushinka passed her security clearance and officially became one of the highest profile members of the Kennedy White House, Bryant admits that he still didn't trust her. He described her as the sort of dog that was likely to snap, and did. After she snapped at the face of a visiting child, Bryant was worried enough to voice his concerns to others. His warnings were brushed aside, but Caroline Kennedy later said that the family believed Pushinka's unpredictable nipping was rooted in her early days. She'd been raised in a laboratory. Today, it's an oft-repeated bit of wisdom: spay or neuter your pets. As far as the Kennedy family was concerned, that was apparently not important, and so there were puppies. Jackie and Caroline Kennedy named them Blackie, White Tip, Butterfly, and Streaker, and their arrival was a big deal. Pushinka had previously lost a litter of puppies despite being taken to Walter Reed Hospital for care. The pups had a very different introduction to the world than their mother did. Bryant writes, "Life centered around the puppies. The children would romp and tumble about with the dogs. The First Lady was anxious for them to learn to handle the dogs with kindness." Eventually, 2 pups went to family friends, while the other 2, Butterfly and Streaker, were given to 2 of the 5,000 or so people who wrote to the Kennedys offering to adopt them. They were nicknamed Pupniks. Jackie Kennedy was always adamant that her dogs didn't need to be leashed because they absolutely and unconditionally listened to her, but thankfully, Bryant insisted. Clipper was a German Shepherd gifted to Jackie by her father-in-law, and Clipper had a wild streak. Bryant recalled him taking out a screen door in an attempt to flee from the sound of a helicopter. He also wrote that it was Clipper who got him in trouble. He was exercising the big dog by playing fetch when he was summoned into the White House from the yard and told to never, ever do that again. Bryant writes, "Later I found out why the president had gotten so excited. He'd been practicing his golf swing and Clipper had leaped for the club when he had it over his shoulder. Clipper had almost succeeded in dislocating the presidential arm. The president ended up swinging club and dog." Bryant also recalled JFK's response when he tried to warn him about security in crowds. Clipper had a particular dislike for one of the family's other dogs, and JFK suggested that getting between the 2 animals was more dangerous than any crowd could ever be. It's every child's dream to look out the window on their birthday morning and see their very own pony. And when you're a Kennedy, of course, you're not just getting one pony, you're getting a bunch of them. In the most famous photos of Caroline Kennedy riding around the White House lawn on a pony so chubby that trotting looks like it's off the table, that's a pony called Macaroni. Macaroni came to the Kennedy family from a local horse trainer after they put out a call for a well-trained, kid-safe pony via their local horse friends. Macaroni's original owner and trainer, Barney Brittle, recalled how the Kennedy family kept in touch with him and updated him as to the pony's progress, or more accurately, shenanigans. In one phone call, Jackie admitted that Caroline had raided her stash of nail polish and that the end result was that Macaroni was now sporting bright red hooves. Macaroni's appetite was legendary, and he was notorious for not only grazing on the White House lawn, but growing so overweight from treats given to him by anyone who could reach through the fence that another fence needed to be installed. He ate a good portion of the White House roses, and when he wasn't entertaining the children or visitors, he lived in a converted potting shed. The Kennedy family's connection to Ireland is pretty well documented, so it's not surprising that when it came time to add another pony to the mix, they looked across the Atlantic.
So here's the great old Kennedy, the U.S. president.
When Irish President Eamon de Valera offered to give the family not only a Connemara pony, but also 2 deer and an actual person to care for the pony, the initial gift was refused because some in the Kennedy camp pointed out that it might not look good in a diplomatic sense. But the offer was eventually accepted. The pony was named Leprechaun. He joined Macaroni on the White House lawn, but he didn't make the trip alone. He was accompanied by the 2 deer, who were also destined for good life on the White House lawn. Macaroni's original owner and trainer, Barney Brittle, was setting up a shed to act as a stable for the 2 deer when a Secret Service agent told him the president had just been assassinated in Dallas. Shannon the Cocker Spaniel was another gift from Ireland, but sources disagree as to where the pup came from. According to Bryant, Shannon was a gift from Irish leader Eamon de Valera. But according to the Limerick leader, the Barry family of Cahir Conlish gave Shannon to the president, who is a third cousin of Imelda Barry. Barry bred award-winning Cocker Spaniels, and the family was reportedly thrilled when Mrs. Kennedy later sent one of Shannon's puppies back to them.
But of all the dogs, I think the most even-keeled one and the nicest dog was certainly Shannon.
Really?
Yeah, Shannon was a sweetheart.
Bryant wrote that Shannon's arrival brought some difficulties along with it, and said that it was basically at the point where there were just so many dogs there were bound to be personality conflicts. Clipper the German Shepherd in particular didn't like Shannon, and when it came time for him to try to set up their beds and personal spaces in Hyannis Port, it was a massive challenge. And Bryant confirmed that it was as loud and unruly as one would think, writing, "Everyone had fun with the Kennedy dogs, except the neighbors." The downside to Irish wolfhounds is that they only have an expected lifespan between 6 and 8 years, which means that getting one implies heartbreak isn't too far down the road. They're typically known as gentle giants, weighing up to 180 pounds. They're great dogs, and Wolf, the Irish wolfhound gifted to the Kennedy family by a Dublin priest, was fine with most people but hated other dogs. Bryant was walking Wolf when JFK told him Charlie had snapped at Jackie. Bryant recalled, "That was the last time I heard his voice. 2 days later, he was dead." Presidential historian and author Carl Anthony is an expert on the everyday lives that go on in the White House, and when he took a look at presidential pets, he noticed something. The election of JFK was seen as a historic moment that put the country on the brink of long overdue change.
The torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Perhaps it's no coincidence that the Kennedys brought a change in presidential pets, too. There was a cat in the White House for the first time since Calvin Coolidge, nearly 40 years before. Tom Kitten was technically Caroline Kennedy's cat, but given that JFK was severely allergic to him, his time in the White House was limited to whenever the president was away. Then Tom's kitten keeper, Jackie Kennedy's secretary Mary Gallagher, would bring the kitten to work with her. The last time it happened was in October of 1963. By then, Tom Kitten was no longer a kitten and had been renamed Tom Terrific. With his departure, there would be no cat in the White House again for more than a decade. Tom Kitten, meanwhile, was still in Gallagher's care when he died. In her memoir, My Life with Jacqueline Kennedy, Gallagher recalled the family coming to visit the cat regularly, and when he died, she wired the sad news to Jackie and Caroline in Italy. Hamsters are pet 101. There's no need to walk them, and they're pretty low maintenance, so they're typically seen as a safer option than jumping right into getting a cat or a dog. While the Kennedy children had plenty of these too, Mary Gallagher wrote in her memoir that hamsters outnumbered everything, including people. There was the time when one of them drowned in the president's bathtub, and one morning as I entered my office and turned on the light by my desk, out ran a mouse-like creature. I emitted a wild shriek, breaking the serenity of the most dignified surroundings of the land.
Mouse! I saw a mouse!
Not only did one drown, but when Mama Hamster gave birth, the babies were reportedly killed and eaten by the father, who was then in turn killed by the mother hamster, who promptly died. Bryant put it bluntly, writing, "Those hamsters were like something out of a Greek tragedy." The Kennedy children also had a number of rabbits. The one that gets the most mentions is Zsa Zsa.
That is so kind of you, please. No pictures.
She was named after actress Zsa Zsa Gabor, which is interesting since Gabor had a relationship with JFK. She told E.T., "He took me out for 3 months. I never slept with him. He slept with everybody. He took me out because he liked to be with me." It gets weirder. In 1961, Life asked Kennedy press secretary Pierre Salinger about the rabbit. He claimed she wasn't going to be staying with the family and was going to be sent to an orphanage. Oh, and that she had been a gift from a Pittsburgh magician who claimed she could play patriotic tunes on a trumpet. In the run-up to Jackie's birthday in 1963, the White House issued a formal request. Please, no more pets. They stressed that any more pets sent to the White House would be rehomed elsewhere. Buried in the story is a bit of information on some of the often overlooked pets, 3 small birds. At the time, the Kennedy kids had 2 parakeets, Bluebelle and Maybelle, and they just had to say goodbye to another feathered friend. Caroline had a canary named Robin, and when the little bird died in 1962, he was buried in a solemn ceremony that took place near the White House playground. Mrs. Kennedy and her children left the White House 2 weeks after the assassination of JFK. What happened to their pets is, in some cases, difficult to track down. According to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, 2 cages with Caroline and John Jr.'s parakeets were moved to their new home ahead of them. Jackie opted to keep only one of their dogs, Shannon. In his memoir, Bryant wrote that he disagreed with the decision, believing it was cruel to take the dogs away from the children while they were grieving their father's loss. He wrote, "It had been strictly Jacqueline's decision. She made it clear she didn't want the trouble or the expense of taking all the dogs." Where did they all go? According to animal trainer Dr. Margaret Reed, author of The Dogs of Camelot, they were rehomed with close friends and professional associates. It's unclear exactly what happened to the Kennedys' horses, but Vicky Moon wrote that Jackie found at least some comforts or solitude away from prying eyes, while regularly riding Sardar. Coverage from the New York Times in 1964 revealed that the deer were donated to the Central Park Children's Zoo.